Let's use a clip from Narcos, Mexico to improve our Spanish. We're going to take a quick, about 30-second clip from season 1, episode 5, and we're going to break it down line by line, paying close attention to pronunciation, intonation/emphasis, and your own comprehension with just a little bit of speaking practice on top. You can make real progress on your Spanish using TV as a tool, especially just to make learning more fun and interesting and change up the way that you're doing things. So that's exactly what we're going to do. The key when you want to do that is to learn actively. Pay active 100% attention to the stuff that you're watching. And the second key is to focus on repetition. So watching one episode of a show all the way through once gives you some degree of repetition, but you probably won't get as much out of it as you would if you took 10 minutes or 5 minutes of that episode and watched it several times. So that's what we're going to do in this case. We're not going to do 5 minutes, but we are going to do a quick 30-second clip so that the final time that you hear it, the pieces all kind of come together and it makes sense to you. And hopefully along the way, you'll have some aha moments in terms of pronunciation and the things that make Spanish sound as quick as it does to non-native speakers. So repetition is really key, and it's really valuable when you want to use something like TV to improve your Spanish. Let's jump into the clip. We are going to watch the clip once through, then we're going to break it down line by line. Again, paying close attention to pronunciation, intonation, and your comprehension. Then we're going to watch it one final time, bringing everything together.
Lo que está tratando de decir mi socio es que las cosas cuando son valiosas, pues la confianza tiene un costo mayor, ¿no?
No, pues sí, todo tiene un precio, ¿no? Y hay que pagarlo, pues, ¿verdad?
Música para los oídos, porque eso lo va a pagar usted.
The first thing to notice is kind of the rhythm of speech. He does not break up his words staccato style, pronouncing each one with equal emphasis and pronouncing the whole sentence all at once. Instead, he breaks up his thoughts in terms of meaning, just like you probably do in your native language. So one thing that we can do to start is to just break up this text here in terms of the chunks of meaning that he's expressing. So the first place that it starts is here.
Lo que está tratando de decir mi socio es que
Starts here, ends here. Lo que está tratando de decir mi socio es que... Then the next thought is...
las cosas cuando son valiosas,
one thought.
pues la confianza tiene un costo mayor.
One thought. So here we have a pretty long sentence, but broken up into different thoughts. And the next step is to pay attention to where the emphasis falls on a given word in the sentence. Sometimes there are multiple places where the emphasis falls. And when you listen for the words that have the emphasis, it both helps you tune your ear to understand people better because you can pick out the most important words in a sentence and you don't need to understand every single little word all the time. And also it can help you start to adapt a bit more of a natural speech pattern to your own Spanish. So here we have a couple words in each thought that are emphasized.
Lo que está tratando de decir mi socio es que
Here we would have tratando and socio are probably the more emphasized words in this phrase, followed by the next phrase.
las cosas cuando son valiosas,
Las cosas cuando son valiosas. Note that las and cuando son are really just uttered quickly. They're not emphasized or totally enunciated in the same way that valiosas, for example, is.
pues la confianza tiene un costo mayor.
Here we have la confianza tiene un costo mayor. These are together kind of emphasized, but he kind of trails off. So it's not entirely emphasized, but it's more emphasized than tiene un, for example. The next thing to look at is the way that he combines words. The way that native speakers combine words makes it so that Spanish sounds pretty quick to a lot of people who are learning it. Because, in particular, when you have words like lo que está together, words that end in an E and then begin with an E tend to get brought together. So they're all one sound. And he does not say lo que está, he says lo que está. Lo que está. So really, this E gets dropped and it all becomes que está, lo que está. The same thing happens here with this D and this D. D's get dropped very often in a lot of varieties of Spanish, in particular when people are speaking quickly. So you could argue either that this entire de gets dropped or just that the two D's get dropped. I hear a very slight second E. So,
Tratando de decir mi socio.
tratando de decir. So here really he's dropping the D, and that makes the o, e become the three sounds that are together. O, e. So it's tratando de decir. Tratando de decir. Rather than tratando de decir. Again, the same thing happens here, where this word, socio, ends in an O. The next word begins in an E. O, e. A common thing that English speakers do when speaking Spanish is put a gap between two vowel sounds. Mi socio es. But it's more common for Spanish speakers to bring the two sounds together with no gap or breath in between. Mi socio es. Lo que está tratando de decir mi socio es que, socio es que, rather than socio es que. Minor difference, but worth pointing out that there's really no distinct border here. There is a much more distinct border here between two consonants. Las cosas. It doesn't take a breath between the words, but you can hear where one word ends and the next one begins. Las cosas.
Las cosas cuando son valiosas. Las cosas cuando son valiosas.
Another interesting sound phenomenon that happens is with the letter V here. You notice that it is not saying son valiosas, son valiosas. Instead, he's saying son valiosas, son valiosas. The V in Spanish is kind of a tricky sound because it's not always pronounced identical, and it does change based on where the person is from to some degree. But broadly speaking, when you have a V that comes after a consonant, as in son, that is going to be a harder sound. It's going to be a bit more like a B. Compare that to the word avión. Avión, plane. Avión, generally that V between two vowels, a, I, is very light. Avión, avión. However, when a V is at the beginning of a word, especially when it comes after a consonant like N, it is going to be a bit of a harder sound. And again, this can change slightly depending on where the person's from. This character is supposed to be from Colombia. The actor himself is from Venezuela.
Pues la confianza tiene un costo mayor.
The next place that we see words getting combined is between tiene and un. Tiene un. You don't hear him saying tiene un with a gap or a stop between them. Instead, it's one sound really, tiene un, tiene un. The two letters don't form necessarily a new sound in this case,
Pues la confianza tiene un costo mayor.
but the u kind of takes precedent over the e, and it becomes one kind of, the two sounds come together. And the next line from the other character who is from Mexico, Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, he has a very distinctly different Mexican intonation to his speech compared to the Colombian who was before him, and see if you can notice any differences. Because paying attention to this kind of thing is both fun and interesting, and it's also helpful in terms of helping you understand a broader range of Spanish speakers from different countries.
No, pues sí, todo tiene un precio, ¿no? Y hay que pagarlo, pues, ¿verdad?
So we can break this down into a couple parts of speech, just like we did before. First one being,
Sí, todo tiene un precio, ¿no?
followed by, y hay que pagarlo pues, followed by verdad. So really he breaks up his sentence into kind of three main thoughts. And we can do the same thing looking at the way that he emphasizes the different words within each thought. Here, what I hear, the most emphasized word is precio, followed by todo tiene, slightly less emphasized, kind of combined into one sound, todo tiene, and precio.
Y hay que pagarlo, pues, ¿verdad?
And here, the most emphasized word is pagarlo, pay it, pagarlo. This last word, verdad, really doesn't get a lot of emphasis, and it's just sort of kind of mumbled, added on to the end of the sentence. Now let's take a look at a couple of the ways that he shortens his words and combines them to speak more quickly.
Sí, todo tiene un precio, ¿no?
The first thing you notice is the way that he drops the D in todo. Todo, in this case, becomes to. No, pues si todo tiene un precio, ¿no? Todo tiene. the D drops off. Again, this is a common phenomenon in Spanish. And just like with the previous speaker, tiene un is one sound without a gap in between. Just tiene un.
Sí, todo tiene un precio, ¿no?
In this next phrase, y hay que pagarlo, y hay que all gets combined into one sound. Y hay que.
Y hay que pagarlo, pues.
Then if you listen closely to the word pagarlo, you'll notice that the G is almost dropped. The G in here in pagarlo is very soft. You're not hearing him saying pagar, but pagarlo. And lastly, the way that he pronounces verdad is he really drops most of the letters out of it, and you kind of only know what he's saying from context. So this isn't something that you need to emulate or imitate yourself, but he's really dropping the ve because that can get dropped pretty easily. In a lot of fast speech, it can kind of not get noticed or not be fully articulated. And like we mentioned earlier, the D's, especially at the end of words, can get dropped. So really the main sounds that you're hearing here are ra, ra, ra.
Música para los oídos. Porque eso lo va a pagar usted.
We've got two main thoughts here. Música para los oídos and porque eso lo va a pagar usted. Now in these two sentences, just like in the others, he has words that are emphasized and words that are not. In this case, we have música and oídos. Oídos are both kind of emphasized. You'll notice that para los is not quite as emphasized.
Música para los oídos.
Música being the main emphasis of the sentence.
Porque eso lo va a pagar usted.
In this last sentence, the emphasis really is on usted and pagar. You pay. The main important meaning of the sentence. Porque eso lo va a pagar usted. And just like we've seen already, here there's a vowel that starts a new word, and that makes these two words come together into really one sound. Los oídos. Los oídos. You're not hearing him say los oídos, but los oídos. And really, rather than los oídos with a well-pronounced D, he's kind of skipping over the D a little bit, speaking a little bit more quickly.
Música para los oídos.
Oídos. So this D is not fully dropped, but it's pretty quiet. And here, porque eso, just like we saw here with lo que está, porque eso becomes one sound, really. Porque eso. There's not a distinct gap between these two words, and so you can kind of consider this e as getting dropped. The same thing happens here with va a pagar. Because there are two A's, one of the A's really gets kind of swallowed up by the other one. You don't hear him pronounce va a pagar.
Lo va a pagar usted. Lo va a pagar usted.
Lo va a pagar. Lo va a pagar. So really, you can consider this a as getting dropped. Lo va a pagar. And again, with this G in pagar, since it's between two vowels, it's very soft. Pagar rather than pagar. Pagar. This happens especially when people are speaking quickly, but it's a really, really common thing in Spanish. So this G is not quite dropped, but it's very soft again. Pagar. And as we've seen already, the D, gets dropped pretty commonly. So in this word, usted, it becomes usted. Usted. ¿Por qué se lo va a pagar usted?
Eso lo va a pagar usted.
Rather than a fully enunciated, porque eso lo va a pagar usted. It becomes usted. This is really common with words that end in D in Spanish. Ciudad, oportunidad, posibilidad. It's very common to end the word without fully enunciating the D. All right, now that we've gone through the whole dialogue, I'm going to go back through each line, pausing for a couple seconds after each one to give you a chance to repeat after each speaker.
Lo que está tratando de decir mi socio es que las cosas cuando son valiosas, pues la confianza tiene un costo mayor, ¿no?
No, pues sí, todo tiene un precio, ¿no? Y hay que pagarlo, pues, ¿verdad?
Música para los oídos. Porque eso lo va a pagar usted.
Lo que está tratando de decir mi socio es que las cosas cuando son valiosas, pues la confianza tiene un costo mayor, ¿no?
No, pues sí, todo tiene un precio, ¿no? Y hay que pagarlo, pues, ¿verdad?
Música para los oídos. Porque eso lo va a pagar usted.
That's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the clip and the breakdown, and I hope you learned a thing or two about Spanish and about pronunciation in particular. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more of it, subscribe, like the video to spread it to more people. And if you want even more, you can go to breakthroughspanish.com, where I have tons of free resources, including a weekly newsletter with simple tips to help you improve your Spanish and learn more effectively, speak confident Spanish faster. Check that out. And otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.